Several years ago, when I moved into my new housing development, I joined my local neighborhood watch. In my first few months on the watch, I witnessed something that I still can't believe. As it all started one late spring evening, as the sun started to drop below the horizon, the neighborhood watch gathered for their monthly meeting. We were a close-knit community, and the watch was our way of ensuring that our streets remained safe and welcoming for all. It didn't take long for me to get acclimated to the rules and the people, and I quickly made friends with my fellow watch members. Our meetings typically consisted of discussing any suspicious activity or safety concerns, followed by a social hour where we would catch up on each other's lives. That was my favorite part. Truthfully, at first, this was the main reason I joined, like I said, and I didn't think the area that I moved into would have much crime, and I figured this would be a great way to meet new people. But tonight's meeting felt different. The atmosphere felt really tense, and I noticed that several of the neighbors seemed on edge. As we shared updates and reports around the table, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was just strange. My suspicions were confirmed when our watch leader, Mr. Thompson, nervously announced that there had been a recent string of thefts in the area. The news sent a weird ripple of unease through the room, and Mr. Thompson assured us that the police were investigating it, but that we should all remain vigilant and report any suspicious activity. As the meeting continued, I noticed that some of my neighbors were exchanging strange looks and whispers, as if though they were trying to gossip about something. As the days wore on, I became increasingly determined to uncover the truth. I approached my friend, Susan, who was also a neighborhood watch member, and asked her if she had seen anything suspicious. She seemed almost nervous to talk about it, but eventually told me what she had thought. The reason why she was so tense was that she had a horrible feeling that the theft was coming from someone inside the watch. To my surprise, Susan confided in me that she had information that one of the neighborhood watch members had been using their position to carry out the thefts themselves. They had been stealing valuable items from houses under the guise of conducting safety checks or while patrolling the area. I was shocked by this. I had joined the watch to help protect our community, not take advantage of it. And Susan explained that she feared what may happen to our small community if she came forward and she was wrong. We decided to go through all the evidence and put an end to this ordeal once and for all. So Susan stayed over at my house that evening, and after a few glasses, she gave me all the evidence that she could find. I'm not gonna lie, at this point it felt weird. I never knew of any neighborhood watch to gather evidence like this. It felt like Susan and I were actual detectives or something. It was kind of funny. She had photos, time logs, and all sorts of things that showed that Mr. Thompson was actually a thief. The leader of the group was the one literally responsible for this theft. We agreed that in the morning, we would go to the police with our evidence and make the neighborhood safe again. And that night, we went to bed at around 11 or 12. Susan slept on the couch, and I, of course, slept in my room, which was only down the hall from the living room. And shortly after 2 a.m., I could hear the creaking floorboards echoing throughout the hall, which woke me up. I thought maybe Susan was using the restroom or looking for food, but after a few minutes, there was no mistaking it. The creaking floorboards were absolutely footsteps, and they were going back and forth. I got out of bed and made my way to the door. I cracked it open and started to peek through. And I couldn't believe my eyes once I finally adjusted them. It was Susan, and she was holding one of those purses that she had, but it was also a backpack, and she was in one of the drawers in my cabinet and was taking things out and throwing them in the bag. I waited a couple of seconds so I could be sure exactly what she was doing. After a few moments, I finally kicked open the door, confronting Susan. She froze like a deer in headlights. She mumbled something and tried to come up with something to say, but instead, she used the bag as a weapon and started to swing wildly at my face. And whatever she had in the bag was heavy because I actually was dazed for a second when she struck me. As I finally was coming to, she was already beginning to run out my door. I immediately go to the phone. I call Mr. Thompson, who told us to call him any time of the day or night if we had seen anything, and I told him everything about Susan, even that she actually intended on framing him for these thefts. Now, Mr. Thompson immediately contacted the police and provided them with the details that I gave him, and Susan instead of trying to hide, went over to another neighbor's house. When the police arrived, it didn't take long for them to find her. Upon entering the house, not only did they find the stuff that Susan stole from me in her bag, but they also found a ton of other things stolen from the community. Instead of denying it, the neighbor who owned the house admitted that he, along with Susan and several others, were responsible for the theft in the community. The Guilty Watch members were arrested and charged with their crimes, and the news of the arrest sent a huge shockwave through our little community, but it also brought a huge sense of relief. We had exposed the corruption within our small ranks and restored the integrity of our neighborhood watch. Now, in the aftermath of all of this, the neighborhood watch was reconstructed and new measures were put in place to prevent such abuse of power from happening again. We became even more vigilant than ever and dedicated to ensuring the safety and well-being of our community. And though the events had shaken our trust in one another quite a bit, it also taught us something. It reminded us that it's not enough just to trust our neighbors. We also got to look out and hold each other accountable. If you enjoyed this scary story, listen to thousands more, either over on the Let's Read YouTube channel or podcast.